Okay. This is my first experience speaking in public, especially about something so emotional, so I'm going to do my best to share my story. I'm a mother of 5 beautiful children. Unfortunately, my life has been touched deeply by suicide. I've lost both my sons to suicide. As a mother, I'm to protect my children and to be aware of all the threats that could harm them. I daily feel I failed. I have so many questions that I'll never have answers for. I lost my oldest stepson, Cliff, on July 20th of 2004. He was a really smart, type A personality, a very dry sense of humor, and was a very gentle young man. My youngest son, Brody, was just 9 years old at the time. Sorry, I've had a cold as well. Anyway, Cliff was moving to Arizona from Minnesota, and he had stopped by in Show Low to visit us for a week on his way to Mesa. He was in good spirits and spent a lot of time with Brody, making plans to spend so much more time with him once he got fully moved to Arizona. A week later, I got an email from him saying that it would be too late once I got the message, and to call his grandparents for confirmation of his passing. He had died by carbon monoxide poisoning. We found out after he had passed that he had a substance abuse problem and a pregnant girlfriend, and that was the beginning of my nightmare. We decided to protect Brody because he was so young and held off telling him about how Cliff had died. Looking back at that now, it was a huge mistake. We never showed Brody how much pain Cliff's passing had caused us, and I feel that if we had shown him the pain, maybe Brody wouldn't have taken his life on September 27th of 2012. I was very close with Brody. He was the baby of the family and the only child I had with my husband, Rick. He was my miracle baby and was a joy to have around. Everybody knew him as the Broder Man. Even at an early age, he was a very happy, outgoing, and protector of all. He would stand up for anyone who was being bullied or hurt. He had a huge heart. But when he was 15, he had a breakup with his girlfriend, and he took some pills. I found him very disoriented and discovered what was going on and rushed him to the ER. They pumped his stomach and required us to take him to a facility in Tempe for a mandatory 10-day evaluation. I asked them to put him on an antidepressant, as depression is common in my family and my husband's, and they would not. They said it causes as many suicides as it prevents, excuse me, in teens, and that after he was out of his teens, he could probably get on some type of medication. After his 10 days, we had him going to a counselor once a week for 6 months, and he seemed to really bounce back well. Brody was a very good athlete. He loved football, golf, and baseball. Those were his favorites. He had so many friends and was busy with all of that, and he also had a job at the golf course. He graduated high school in May of 2012 and decided to stay in Show Low instead of going off to college and playing football because of his girlfriend, who was still a junior and didn't want to leave her. In August, she broke up with him. She just wanted to experience high school without a boyfriend since they had been together since she was a freshman. Brody was just devastated. Most of his friends had already left for college, and he had moved out into a rental home. He had roommates that had backed out, so he was very isolated. I spent a lot of time with him helping to set up the house and trying to convince him that it was just a blip and everything was going to be fine again, and that he could still go to college if he wanted, and that there were so many options that were still available to him. For days before he passed, he struggled and tried to find his way, but couldn't find a roommate, was missing most of his friends, and was very lonely. He wasn't sleeping much, and he actually told me that he was worthless and that he didn't have anything going for him. I just comforted him and thought it was just typical teenage problems and that he would be okay. I had no idea that he was making plans to end his life. Sorry. The day he took his life, he reached out to many, including his football coaches, who didn't have time for him that day. And the coach lives with that daily. His friends all told him by text messages or social media that they loved him and that they were there for him, but they never managed to come and see him face to face. I checked in on him by text as well, as I was at work that day, and he said he was doing fine and that his girlfriend had texted him and she had told him she loved him and that there was still a possibility for them to have a future. He seemed very encouraged. I got a text from him at 3:36 p.m. that day that only said, "I love you." He sent it to 8 people. As soon as I saw it, I just knew. I went straight to the house, and it was all locked up. I struggled to get in, but finally found the key, but it was already too late. I found him. He had shot himself in the heart. They said it was instant, and he didn't suffer, and that gave me a small amount of comfort. He was sitting in his recliner, and it just looked to me as though he was asleep. But he had all the lights turned off, and once I opened the blinds, I realized that he had shot himself when I saw the gun laying on the floor. Being the one to find him is something that still hurts as much today as it did that day. I suffered from PTSD for over 2 years and still have moments that take me right back to that moment. I lived in a fog for a long time, not really functioning or wanting to be alive myself. I never thought to take my life, but it was a very dark time and difficult for me. So I want you parents to know a few things. I obviously am not an expert, but I've learned so much since that day. Always take anything your kids say seriously. Don't ever dismiss a comment like, "I feel worthless" or "I have nothing going for me." Those are common words that suicidal people use. Be very concerned if they are not getting enough sleep, and always check in with them and ask if they are okay, even if they get annoyed for you asking again and again. Maybe if I'd asked just one more time, my son might still be here. I'll never know, though, and I live with that daily. Don't count on text messages and social media to know what is going on with them. Get face-to-face with them and get them help from an outside source if you have any concerns. They won't always talk to their parents when they are struggling. There are so many things going on in this world today, and I feel our kids are just overwhelmed and struggling with how to make their way. Even though Brody seemed happy on the outside, he must have had a lot going on that he wasn't sharing and kept to himself. Males are especially unwilling to share because they are supposed to be strong and not show any emotion. Brody said that he was just tired and nothing that he did was right. That, of course, was not true, but that's what he told himself. He isolated himself, and that didn't help him come out of the dark place that he was in. I stayed overnight one night, about a week before he passed, when he had texted me that I just need my mom. I slept on his couch that night, and about mid-evening he came downstairs and laid down next to me, and I just held him for the rest of the night. That's the saddest I had ever seen him. I go back to that night often. It is devastating, but the closest I have felt to him. I struggle daily knowing how alone and lost he must have been in those final moments of his life. And it breaks my heart to know I wasn't able to help him through it, that he couldn't see a future. So don't think it can't happen to you, because it can, and it does. It happened to me and my family twice. Don't think that if they survived a previous attempt that they won't try again. Keep trying to get them the help they need, even if you have to butt your head over and over again. Even if you are turned away from one source, don't give up. They're counting on us to get them through it. Get them to take a minute, an hour, a day, and try to make them see that life is worth living, and there are so many things to be hopeful for. Help them to use resources such as telephone helplines, text lines, online chats, and video chats, options now available that were not available when my sons were struggling. I believe there's hope for our children and grandchildren, but they need to know that suicide is not an option. We need to have open conversations about suicide and mental illness. We need to stop the stigma associated with both and make it more acceptable for them to admit that they need help. We need to listen and be present with them. Make them the priority and not our phone, our computer, or whatever distractions we may have. We need them to know how devastated we would be if they were not in our lives. If you feel something is wrong, it probably is. And as for suicide loss survivors, if you know someone who is dealing with suicide loss, don't ignore or stay away. We needed our friends and family the most, and many of them disappeared or stayed away because they did not know what to say or do. Just show them that you love them and tell them you are there for them, and that's really all they need. I pray I've given you something that you can use so that you will not ever have to feel the sorrow, pain, and devastation that I live with daily. I miss my boys every second of every day, and I will until I take my last breath.